This video lecture addresses species interactions, population dynamics, and natural selection as concepts in general ecology. The organization is based in part on Smith & Smith Elements of Ecology. Central to species interactions is the need to acquire the basic resources necessary for growth and reproduction. Competition for resources within a habitat can become intense, and resource acquisition by individuals of one species reduces availability to individuals of another species. Interactions that are mutually beneficial to both parties are ubiquitous and relate to nutrition, shelter, defense, and reproduction. To help us understand the natural world and compartmentalize the complexity, species interactions can be classified based on the reciprocal effects. By designating the positive effect of one species on another as a plus, a detrimental effect as negative, and a no effect as zero, we can develop a classification of possible interactions between two co-occurring species. A neutral interaction is characterized as no effect on species A and species B. Commensalism is described as no effects for species A and a positive effect on species B. Mutualism is described as positive effects for both species. Amensalism is described as no effect for species A and a negative effect for species B. Competition results in negative effects for both species. Predation, parasitism are described as having a positive effect for species A and a negative effect for species B. Species interactions typically involve the interaction of individual organisms within the respective populations. By influencing individuals' probabilities of survival and/or reproduction, interactions influence the collective properties of birth and death at the population level, and in doing so influence the dynamics of the respective populations. Species interactions can function as agents of natural selection. Phenotypic variation among individuals within the populations can result in differences in the nature and degree of interactions that occur. These phenotypic differences in the degree of interaction may influence the relative fitness of individuals within the populations, resulting in the process of natural selection. Coevolution is the process in which two species undergo reciprocal evolutionary change through natural selection. Mutually beneficial interactions typically serve to reinforce the phenotypic changes that result from the species interactions, while mutually detrimental interactions typically result in phenotypic changes that function to reduce the intensity of interaction. The nature of species interactions can vary across geographic landscapes. Species with wide geographic distributions like the red maple, Acer rubrum, range map shown here on left, are more likely to encounter a broader range of biotic interactions, much more so than species with more narrow geographic ranges like the black maple, Acer nigrum, range map shown here on the right. Changes in the nature of biotic interactions across a species' geographic range can result in different selective pressures and adaptations to the local biotic environment. Thus, significant genetic differences can occur among local populations inhabiting different regions. Ultimately, differences in the types of species interactions encountered by different local populations can result in genetic differentiation and the evolution of local ecotypes. Species interactions can be diffuse. Most interactions are not exclusive, involving only two species, but involve a number of species that form diffuse associations. Diffuse coevolution is the process in which a network of species undergoes reciprocal evolutionary change through natural selection. Species interactions influence the species niche. The ecological niche is the range of physical and chemical conditions under which a species can persist and the array of essential resources it utilizes. The fundamental niche is the ecological niche of the species in the absence of interactions with other species. As shown in the upper two graphics on the right, the fundamental niche of Planaria A and Planaria B vary by temperature, but overlap. What is depicted is the range of each species by temperature in absence of competition. In contrast, the species' realized niche is its ecological niche as modified by its interactions with other species within the community. Species interactions can function to either restrict or expand the fundamental niche of a species dependent on whether the interaction is detrimental or beneficial. In this example, as shown in the bottom graphic, the realized niche of Planarian A shrinks, as it does for Planaria B, when both species co-occur in a habitat. This is a simplified conceptual example, so in reality, the range may be more complicated. One interesting point: different species can hold similar niches in different locations. For example, as shown here, Australian grassland species and Great Plain grassland species occupy the same niche. Another interesting point: the same species may occupy different niches in different locations. For example, when plants and animals are introduced into a new environment, they can occupy the new niches of native organisms, outcompete the indigenous species, and/or become a serious pest. Some examples of invasive introduced species are shown here, including the Melaleuca, Melaleuca quinquenervia, purple loosestrife, Lithrium salicaria, and Brazilian pepper, Schanus terebinthifolius. The following resources were consulted in developing this video lecture on species interactions, population dynamics, and natural selection as concepts in general ecology.